So welcome to the Biology Sophomore Seminar. I'm Stephanie Race, and I'm the Head of Research and Outreach here at the library. And we're going to spend the next 50 minutes talking about resources available to you here at the library, some very general resources that you'll use for everything, and then some very specific things that you'll use for your biology classes. As we go, feel free to ask questions. The more questions you ask, the better off we are, because if you don't know something or you've got a question about something, chances are somebody else in this room has that same question. We're going to start with just kind of a basic overview of things in the building. How many of you have been to one of these kind of sessions before? A couple of you. Any of you been to one for sciences, or were they like freshman English kind of general sessions? Kind of general? Okay. Okay, so the majority of you haven't. How many of you have been in the library before? That's a good, I like that. That makes us happy. So we're going to talk about some of the resources that you have available and how you can get to them. So we're going to log into the library. If you just Google UNF Library, we pop up, but it is www.unf.edu/library. And I'm just going to go through a couple things that will make life a little easier for you. As you work through your program, the farther along you get in your program, the more intense the work gets and the more efficient we would like you to be. So I'm going to show you some of the things that are going to actually help you be a little more efficient in your research process. One of them is knowing that the library's here. One of them is knowing how you can get help from the library. How many of you have ever asked a librarian or somebody in the library for help? A couple of you have. Where did you go to get that help? The first floor? Did you go to the desk at the front or the desk in the back? In the back? Ooh, fancy. You went to the desk in the front? The circulation desk in the front? That's the desk right when you walk in the door. Anybody else gotten help somewhere? Anybody just randomly asked somebody who had on a name tag? Smart guy. So we've got a couple service points where you can get help in this building. So for a whole bunch of you are obviously using the library for things. As you walk in the door, the front desk, the circulation desk, the information desk, they can help with things. So do you have a book? They'll look up some basic stuff for you. If you've got more in-depth research questions, there is a desk in the back on the first floor that we call the research information desk, the research help desk. Which is a great place to go for more in-depth help. It's staffed typically from 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. with somebody who wants to help you. Anybody with a name tag will be glad to help you. So if you're in the stacks, you're upstairs looking for a book and you've got a question, if you see somebody with a name tag, somebody pushing a cart, they can help you find things. But you can also call us. How many of you would prefer to work at home in your PJs than to be in this building? Y'all are a bunch of liars. So a lot of us would prefer to, I would prefer to work at home. That's my preference. I don't get much done, but I prefer to do that. And there are ways you can get help. So you can call us on the phone, you can text us, you can email us, and you can actually chat with us. And I'm going to show you how to do all of those things online. The other thing that you can do is, if you know you've got a question and it's an in-depth research question, maybe you're working on your senior project and you're getting ready to do your presentation and you think, I really need some help finding the sources for this paper, for this project, to document my research, and you want to make sure you're meeting with a librarian and you've got one-on-one time, you can actually schedule an appointment with us, and we'll do one-on-one appointments with you. So we're going to talk through and walk through how to get to all of those services here at the library. From the library's front page, a couple things under library. There are lots of good things you need to know about. I think the best stuff is over here under my accounts. So if you're on the library page, remote access, for those of you who like to work at home in your pajamas, the most important thing you need to know is that if you don't log in remotely, you have a harder time getting to things. So I'm going to show you a lot of things today, our research databases, that actually require that you authenticate when you come in. So just like when you walk through the door, you have to swipe your ID to say, I'm a student, I should have access to everything in the building. If you're at home, we want you to swipe in and say, I'm a student, I belong there, I should have access to everything. And to do that, we use the remote access. So if you're on the library's webpage under Library, My Accounts, there's a link that says Remote Access. If you're working from home, I recommend that you start every session with this. Because typically, if you start your session with this, you won't have to do it again. If you forget this step, you'll get prompted farther along to do it. I just find that to be annoying sometimes because it interrupts my flow, but you will get prompted if you forget to do this. From here, you'll click Login. Once you click Login, you'll be prompted to enter your N number and your million-digit password. If you do that here, a bunch of you just did that here and it just did a loop, right? It didn't ask for anything. When you're on campus, you're already authenticated. You're already on our network. We know you're legit. We're going to let you in. If you are at home, it'll ask for your N number, your password. Once you've done that, it'll cycle you back to wherever you were, and you should be able to continue with your search process. But I would encourage you to start with that step. It typically, if we get a call on a weekend or we get a call at night and somebody's having problems, that usually solves all the problems. And it works for faculty, it works for staff, it works for students. If you're affiliated with the university, that's going to get you in. The other things that are here on this front page, how many of you have ever done research and you found a great article or you found a great book and we didn't own it? Anybody run into that? What did you do? You found a different one. You just gave up, I can't have it. What'd you do? Okay, you looked for more links to it. You tried to find another option. Anybody else try something? Anybody pay for something? You paid for something. You bought it. Wow. Okay. We don't want you to do that unless you really want to own the book. You're a poor, starving college student.
It was a good book.
It was good? Okay, as long as it was good. We don't want you to pay for things that you don't really want to own. If you want to use it for one shot for research, you're not sure you want to own it, we don't want you to have to pay for it. So under your My Accounts, the option for Interlibrary Loan, this is a service that we provide where we will get you the articles and the books that you need to support your research. It is a free service that we provide. So if you're looking for an article and it looks like this is the perfect article for me and it's not available, so it doesn't show up as full text, it's not in our collection, if you complete the Interlibrary Loan form, we will get those for you. So articles that we get for you actually is a scanned copy. You get an email that says your article's available, you go and you download it. Books we would borrow from someplace else, you get an email, we would hold it at the front desk on the first floor. You'd come in and check it out just like any other library book, have a regular due date. When you're finished with it, we send it back to the library that sent it to us. So it's a free service that we provide. It doesn't work if you procrastinated. So if your paper is due tomorrow morning and you waited until tonight to do it, we can't help with that. But if your paper is due in 2 weeks and you started now, we will probably be able to get it for you. I've gotten articles for students. We actually have a biology student who works for us, and she was doing this, she was doing some research on this strange sea creature. I can't remember what it was called. It was weird. And we had her article within less than 24 hours. We submitted the request, and she comes running back to my office the next day. It's already here. So we can get things for you pretty quickly if you need them. Books take a little longer because they actually have to be shipped to us, but articles are pretty quick. You log into the system, your username is your N number, and then your password is just your million-digit password. The other service under library that I wanted to talk about is called Refworks. Have any of you used Refworks? Have any of you had to write a paper where you had to do a bibliography? How many of you love to do that? Okay, I don't have any takers on that. Good old STEM folk. Actually, it's pretty universal. Most of us don't like to do it. Refworks is a really great service that we offer, and it's a free service that we provide. The nice thing about it is it's mobile, so if you're thinking about going to grad school and you discover, I love Refworks, it's the best thing ever, you can actually transport it with you. If you go to another school that offers that service, you can actually just convert everything to your new institution, to the account once you get there. So it's a nice service that works that way. We're actually going to log into that. I'm going to have you all create accounts if you don't already have an account. So we're going to go ahead and open it up. And if you don't have an account, you'll see at the very bottom in very, very light gray, it says Create Account. So if you don't have an account, I want you to go ahead and do that and create an account. I'm going to go ahead and sign into my account and walk around as you all create your accounts and answer any questions you might have. You need to attach this account to your UNF email. So it's your N number at Osprey's email account. You'll put in your email, it'll say yay you, you'll have to go open up your email in your MyWings account to get the attached email and authenticate yourself through. So it sends you an activation email, and then there'll be a link in there, and then you'll set up an account. Yep.
I don't know what the end of the email is.
At ospreys.unf.edu. Yeah. You knew the part I didn't know. So you're going to go under here and then Refworks. There you go. And once your account is set up, you probably will open up a page and it'll be a lovely plain white screen. Mine has a bunch of stuff on it because I've been using mine. I've been using a lot this past week. Yeah.
So a number at Ospreys?
At ospreys.unf.edu.
Perfect.
Yeah. Okay. Looks like it's working for a number of you. So the nice thing about Refworks, and we're starting with an account, and we're going to create the account. I'm going to show you a little bit of the magic that it'll do, and then we're going to set it aside and we'll do some searching and show you some other connections that you can make with your Refworks account. The nice thing about the Refworks account is that it helps you organize the material that you collect for research, and it helps you create a bibliography and helps with your citations. It is a computer-generated citation creator, and so anything generated by a computer may or may not have errors in it. So you still have to double check, but it does do a lot of the work for you. I worked with a faculty member last week who had submitted a paper for publication, apparently had a lot of problems with it, and she finally called me and said, please help me before they kill me. And so I actually used the APA style manual, I used Refworks, and I think we got most of her stuff cleaned up. But I do think this will help you. So it looks like most of you are getting in there. So I, within Refworks, already have a bunch of things I've loaded. As we do research, you can easily import data into your Refworks account, and we'll see that as we start searching the databases. But what I want to show you are just a couple things where I'm going to pick a couple articles off of my list of citations that I have here, and I am going to click a couple buttons, and I now have a bibliography. How many of you would like to be able to create a bibliography? And was it worth coming today? So Refworks, Refworks is a tool that you may not use this semester. So it may be one of those things where you're not taking a single class where you have to write a paper. And then next semester you need to use it. So next semester when you need to use it and you don't remember how to do it, what might you do? Say it louder. Ask. So next semester when you can't remember how Refworks works, come in and say, I came to a class, they showed us this thing that made the bibliography magic, and I can't remember how that worked. Someone will help you. Someone will help you set up an appointment with us. We can help with all of that. So I'm going to introduce it today. You now know that it's magic because I, in about 2 seconds, created a bibliography. And now you know that you can follow up with that. A couple things I will say. It is a computer-generated bibliography, which means it may or may not be accurate. It is only as good as the data that I fed into it. And sometimes that data is junk. It's only as good as what I feed to it. And you always want to double check. There are citations. What format do you guys use for citations?
Anything that's in a published biology journal.
Okay.
As long as they're consistent.
Okay. And consistency for a lot of faculty is definitely the way you want to go. So my format right now is APA because that's the last thing I did. What you'll see is I can click on this drop down here and I can change. I do a lot of work with the engineering students, and so if I was like, oh, I needed this for engineering, I could click the IEEE. It has suddenly reformatted these for me. And you'll see this format is very, very different than what I used in the other APA, but it did all that hard work for me. The other thing that I can do with this is, how many of you have done papers where you have to do the in-text citations, where you're typing along and you need to do that? You don't like that either. You don't like that either? I can't type. It's not so much I don't like them, I just find them difficult. I have a Google Doc up. You can do this in Microsoft Word as well. There is an add-on that I've added to my Google account. And so I don't remember how to do this, so I go to my Refworks, I pull up a citation for something. I have a bunch of really weird citations that I don't want to use. Ooh, we'll use this one. We're going to cite this thing. I'm still in the last format, which was IEEE. It's a numbered format, so it put in my number, and then it created my citation here. I'm going to cite this one, and it just keeps adding for me. You can do this I'm using Google because we don't have administrative privileges, but there's also a Word add-on as well that you can use. So Refworks is just one of those really nice tools that we're going to provide access to. I will point out, I'll go back to my documents list. As you add things to it, they get dumped in here. You can create folders. So I have a whole bunch of folders for different papers I've worked on, different classes I've taught is typically what this ends up being for me. There are a number of tools. So there are a number of tools here that I can use. Under tools is where you want to go to get the little add-on. So the site in Microsoft Word or the site in Google Docs, you'll find those under tools. And those are typically some of the main things you're going to want to do. So I'm going to go back to the library. That was just an intro. You all now have an account within Refworks. And when you get ready to write a paper, it's going to be a tool that you'll use. And I'm going to show you how to get things into it as well. So those are three of the things under library where the three really important things you'll want to use. One of the other things I do want to point out is the wireless printing option here. We just had a change in the way the wireless printing works within the building. If you're on campus, you can send things to our printers. Used to be if you were off campus, you could send things to our printers, and that no longer works. But if you are on campus, on the network, you can send things to our printers and then come pick it up. This is kind of nice. If you're working on a resume on your laptop, you can just simply send it to the printer and run pick it up. If you're coming over for the career fair, if any of you are planning to go to the career fair and you realize, oh, I needed to send my resume, you can just send it from your laptop. If you live in the dorms, you can send it from your dorm and pick it up here. Our printers are black and white in color. It's 9 cents a page for black and white prints and 25 cents a page for color prints. But you can do all of that here. I'm going to go back to the home page and point out a couple other things. I mentioned that you can contact us. Our contact info is at the bottom of the page, so you've got a phone number, a text number, and an email for contacting. Notice that the text and the phone are different. You might want to put those into your phone. So if you think, hey, I might want to call the library at some point, you might want to just program those into your phone. You can call us, you can text us. Shocks me the kind of questions we can answer via text. If you can ask it, we'll answer it. We'll send you links to things. You guys use your phones like nothing. So it's definitely an option that you might want to consider. And then you can also email us questions as well. The other way you can ask questions is you see this little chat online box over here? Had anybody noticed it? Little blue chat online. It's on the right side of your screen. Had anybody seen that? It was kind of hiding there. The chat online is another way to go. You can actually chat with us. It's a synchronous conversation with whoever's staffing the desk. It's typically open until 7 at night. There's typically somebody online to ask a question of. And it's a nice way to go. We find a lot of students use it from within the building. You don't want to get up and walk down and talk to us, so you just send us a chat. You're looking for something, you need to know where a book is. It's perfectly okay. I would rather you ask a question from sitting at your table than just not ask the questions that you've got. So we're good with that. But you can use it, if you're not here, you're doing study abroad, you have a question, feel free to ask it that way. The other way you can get help is, so we looked at the library and there's some things there. Under students, there are a lot of options here. The last thing on the list is research consultations. And this is how you make an appointment with a librarian. So this is when you want dedicated help from a librarian. Our desk is staffed by research staff and students who are really well trained. The staff who work our research desk, most of them have been doing this for 15 years or more. They're really good at what they do. But if you want a librarian, you can make an appointment with us. You can also call us. You pick who you want. I'm Stephanie Race. I do the STEM stuff. If you're curious about any of us, if you click on the little info, it tells you a little bit about who we are and sort of what our focus is. But any of us can help you. And the reason I say that is if you choose no preference, what it says is, I don't care. I want to find somebody who's available at the time that I can come in. If you choose an individual librarian, what you're doing is you're looking at when we're available. So if you say, I only want to make an appointment with Stephanie, what happens is suddenly there's not a lot of availability showing up in terms of making an appointment because it's looking at my calendar, and for some reason my calendar is super full. It's like we're closed next Monday and I'm taking next Tuesday off. So that just weeds those out. Whereas if we say no preference, you get a lot more availability, just in terms of who's around and who can make an appointment with you. The way it works, you pick a day that you want to come in. So you want to come in Wednesday at 9 a.m. The system matches you with the first person available. That happens to be Maria. And then you tell us about yourself and what you need help with. The more you tell us in certain places, the better we help you. So the first parts are easy. Your name and your email you have to give us. We need an N number, what your major is. Location, we can meet with you face-to-face. So we'll meet with you up here on the second floor in the consultation area. We can meet with you online. So if you're taking an online class or just coming to campus isn't convenient, I have a student that I've been working with. She's on bed rest. She also lives in Illinois, but she's on bed rest. She can't come in. And so we meet. She's in her bed with her computer, and I'm in my office, and we do a video chat. And so that's an option. So if you work a lot and coming to campus is hard for you, this is an option. We do consults via phone. Phone's a little harder just because we can't see each other's computers, but we can do that. And then we can meet in other locations. So I've had appointments with faculty where I've gone to their offices. I know some people have met at Starbucks. We'll go anywhere on campus to meet with you. And then the really important thing is describing your project. What do you need help with? If what you put here is, I need help with my research project, I'm going to show up and do no homework. If what you put is, I'm taking biology sophomore seminar and I'm writing a paper on something, you had a pretty something on your screen earlier. I wish I'd have paid attention to it. You had some animal thing.
Those are sharks.
He had some pretty shark on his screen. I'm doing a paper on some kind of shark and I need to know X, Y, and Z about the shark that has a much more complicated name than shark. When you tell me that, then I would go out and I'd actually do homework before we met. So I would actually do some review to determine what are the appropriate databases. Maybe you needed stats. So maybe you needed to know how many of these sharks are around. I don't know what kind of things you'd want to know about sharks. But if you needed those I might have to go someplace different to find that kind of data. So by giving us good detailed descriptions of what you need help with in this, we will do more prep. I took Friday off. My boss ended up with an engineering student. And so we actually spent Friday texting about a consultation he had, making sure he was looking in the right places for research assistants. He does art, I do sciences. So when I have an art thing, he has to do that for me. So make sure your description is good because it really does help us as we prepare to meet with you. Then you hit confirm appointment, you get a confirmation email, and it gets dropped on our calendar. It automatically gets scheduled. You'll get a reminder that we meet. After you've met, you'll get a follow-up survey asking how we did, and you're good to go. The appointments typically last 30 to 45 minutes to an hour. They're blocked for an hour, but it's a great way to go if you need research assistance. I encourage you to take advantage of it. Has anybody used the appointment? It's the first class I've done where nobody had taken advantage of it. The other thing I'll tell you about the appointments is you can use it as often as you want. So if you end up in a class where you're doing a lot of research, I worked with a student who was an honors, she was an honors student and she was working on her capstone project. Any of you honors? Okay, she was working on her capstone project and it got to be the last semester and she was having a really hard time getting focused and getting it done. And so we met the first time, it was the beginning of the semester, we met. She then scheduled appointments with me every 2 weeks. We had a standing appointment every Monday afternoon, And if she realized she wasn't going to need it, she just canceled it. But she knew she had it and it kept her on track. And a couple of us have had those kind of appointments where we've had a student who just, I know Maria actually I think had one where she met with the young lady every week. I don't know what the class was the girl was taking, but she just needed, she was doing a lot of research and they just met every week. Sometimes it was 15 minutes, sometimes it was an hour, but it kept her on track. So don't worry that you've used up your quota of times to meet with a librarian. And don't worry if you don't meet with the same librarian all the time. So you may meet with me and be like, oh, that didn't work so well. Our personalities don't jive, I need to try somebody else. We have students who do that. You know, you try somebody, that didn't work, you try the next person and you hit it off and it's a great relationship that you develop. None of us get our feelings hurt about that. But if, once you find that person who you just work really well with, your interests are related in terms of the research, it works really well. So I encourage you to take advantage of this service. And we offer this service to students, faculty, staff. We do also offer this to non-students. So we occasionally we'll have an appointment. I did an appointment with a group of students from FAMU who lived over here and needed some research help, and they wanted to talk to they didn't want to talk online. They wanted to meet with a librarian. So they just came in and we met. So that's definitely an easy thing for us to do. Other things under student resources, how many of you have used study rooms? Okay, so study rooms are on this list under student resources. Couple things to note about study rooms. Any of you ever shown up for your appointment and there was somebody in the room and they'd overbooked you? No, you have to kick them out? Sometimes you have to kick them out, but sometimes your appointment doesn't go through. And what I'll tell you about that is that, does anybody know the secret to making sure you get your room reservation? You're shaking your head yes. Confirming your room. The key to getting the room is actually confirming the room. So when you make your reservation, it's very similar to reserving a librarian. It's actually the same software is working behind the scenes. You'll pick the room that you want. You'll pick how long you want it. You can reserve you can make 3 reservations a week for 3 hours at a time for a total of 9 hours. When you make your reservation, you need 2 N numbers, so there have to be 2. It's a group study room, so you need a group of at least 2. The first person on the list is going to get an email confirmation. You have to confirm that message. So you're going to get an email confirmation. You have to click on that link to confirm it. That finalizes your appointment. If you don't get that email, something happened and it didn't go through. And so you wait, after 15 minutes it releases. I've done that because you have to do your N number and I did my N number wrong. So then I don't know where those messages go. Somebody else got the email confirmation. I don't know. After 15 minutes, it releases the room and you can book it again. So if you haven't gotten a confirmation within 15 minutes, something's wrong and try and rebook the room that you want. Couple keys for those of you who do a lot of group study room reservations. You are limited to the 3 hours a day, 3 days a week. But if you look at the group study rooms, you'll notice we have group study rooms, and then we also have the Mediascape collaboration tables. Have any of you used those? Okay, those are the tables on the back wall here behind this room that we're in. And the tables with the dual monitors can be reserved. So it adds to it. Your group study room reservation and your Mediascape table reservation are separate. So it doubles the amount of reserved table space you can have. Does that make sense? So you can do 3 blocks on group study rooms and 3 blocks of Mediascapes. So when we're super busy, that is helpful. We are not as busy right now as we will be. For those of you who are here during finals, there gets to be a time where you can't get a room you can't get a table. So reserve ahead. You can reserve up to a week in advance. If you like study rooms and you have a group that you work with, it is possible to reserve the same room for an entire semester. I've seen students do it. Your group we're going to meet every Monday at 3 o'clock when this class is over. We're going to go to the room on the 3rd floor. That's the room we like. If you're organized, you can make that happen. It does take being organized. Yes?
Can you call and reserve a room without using the UNF website?
Can you call and reserve a room without doing the website? I don't know if we would do that for you or not. I don't know that anybody's ever asked me that question. In my head, I think I would make you do it. Now, this is going to sound horrible, and after class, I'm going to ask what would happen. I think it might depend on who answered the phone. That's a horrible answer. Because I think, like, if you called me on a Saturday and we were slow, I might do it. If we were super busy, I would give you the link and tell you to do it yourself, but I don't know what our policy is.
You can't call and make an appointment, so to speak.
No, because you have to use the online form for it. So we would, if we did it over the phone, we would make you talk through everything that had to go in the form. So it'd be easier to do it yourself, unless you couldn't get online. I don't know. But after class, I'm going to have to go down and find out what would happen if you called the desk and asked. Because I do think it would, depend on how busy we were, and it would depend on who answered the phone. Some people would say no off the bat, just because we don't typically do that. Like, we don't go into the stacks and pull books for people typically to hold, but we will do holds. So it's kind of... I think if you couldn't get an online connection, then we might do it for you, but I don't know. Try it and find out. But I will find out after class. I will check. Other questions? So we've covered a lot of the general service-y kind of things. Anything somebody's told you you could do at the library that I haven't covered? Anything you know you can do here that I haven't covered that you think other people should know? Sometimes you know something and you want to keep it a secret. Nobody has one of those? Okay. So we're going to go back to the homepage for the library, and we're going to get into the meat of things. So we're going to get into the content. We've covered a lot of service things. Really key is, how do you get help? That's important. But how do you find the information that we have? And right in the middle of the front page of the libraries is a search screen. And this is what we call One Search. And it searches about 95% of everything the library owns. The library subscribes to about $2 million worth of resources. So we're subscribing to a lot of resources that support what you're doing. How many of you are only taking biology classes? Okay, that's kind of what I expected. What other kinds of classes are you taking right now? Physics, chemistry, English. Okay, so we got a kind of a mix of things that you're taking, and that's kind of how life works. You take a mix of classes. And so One Search is great because it searches everything we have. But if you really only want biology things, One Search may be a little overwhelming, because One Search, when I say it searches 95% of everything we have, and we have classes, we have databases that support all of your classes. So we have databases that support the physics, we have databases that support the chemistry, and the English, and the history, and the art and design, and all of those kind of things. They all get searched here, and so we're going to kind of talk through how to use this and how to make it work for you, and the best ways to make it work. Can I pick on you and your shark stuff? Sure? Okay, so I'm going to start, and I am simply going to do a search for sharks. And I forgot my... So I just did a search for sharks, and I got a lot of stuff. I got a lot of stuff. How many of you want to go through almost 2 million entries to find the right thing? Y'all are really lazy. Y'all are really smart. 2 million things is a lot. So you're interested in sharks. Is there something very specific, something more specific about sharks that you're interested in? Okay, anybody else have an interest in sharks? Because I could make something up. Okay. Something more specific about sharks that you might be interested in?
Shark migration patterns.
That's good. Shark migration patterns. And I have to write things down or I can't remember. But I also write things down because it helps me process what we're going to talk about. So we started with sharks. It gets us 1 million entries, way more than you really want to look for. And so what I would recommend, you could come in here and you could go through all of these. If you really weren't sure where you wanted to focus, typically if you use a very large search term, you get a research starter. And the research starter tends to be a really nice intro to a topic. So maybe you would want to read this, and, oh, this is where I want to focus, or I want to look at some other part of it. But we really want to look at shark migration patterns, and I want to get us out. We have one box to search in here. And almost every type of search you do, there's an option to do an advanced search, and I highly encourage you to get used to using it. Do any of you use advanced search in Google? A couple of you do. Anybody do extra stuff when they search in Google? You all do search in Google, right? Okay. Do you all just put whatever it is in the line? You just go with it? You get a million things back? Y'all are cute. Because now you look like you think you shouldn't do that. It's what we all do. I'm a librarian. I've been doing libraries for 30 years. I still do it. But for our research, we want to be a little more precise than that. So I went to an advanced search, and you'll notice the advanced search gave me some extra things. I now have 3 boxes. And the 3 boxes let me combine my terms together. And you'll notice, how many of you have used this kind of box somewhere? You've seen this kind of thing where it adds different boxes and it's got ands and ors and nots. How many of you know what to do with those things? How many of you feel really comfortable that the words you put and the way you choose and or and not really make sense? A couple of you. A couple of you feel super confident. Most of you are like, no, I just put in words and I try different combinations to see what happens. Yeah, getting some nods. So if we're looking for shark migration patterns, if we were going to Google search this, you would just put shark migration patterns in your search box and you'd find something. I don't know if it'd be good or not, but you'd find something. So we're going to look for sharks here, and I'm looking for sharks, and I'm looking specifically at their migration patterns. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to use sharks as my main topic, and I'm going to add in a second term here. And I'm going to make a decision as I search about how I want to combine and whether I want to use and or not. So if I say I want sharks and migration patterns, any idea what the system's going to do with those two things? I tell it I want it to look for sharks and I want it to look for migration patterns. What's it going to give me? If I told it I wanted sharks or migration patterns, what might it give me? Either one. So if I tell it I want sharks and migration patterns, what's it going to give me? It's going to give me both. You guys all have this, that was a trick question, look on your face. So if I ask for sharks and migration patterns, I'm telling it I want both of those words to show up, or both of those phrases. They have to be there. And when I do that, I should get a smaller set. If I said I wanted sharks or migration patterns, it's going to give me either one of you. And a couple of you are shaking your heads and like, no way, that's not what we want to do. Why is that not what we want to do? If I say sharks or migrations patterns and it gives me either one of those, what happens? Do we get what we want? No, we could get migration patterns of bears. We're not even looking at the right kind of animals anymore. So when we say and, it's saying both of these concepts have to be there. When we say or, either one has to be there. One of the ways to remember that is when we do migration patterns in sharks, we want to get a smaller set. We started with 1 million. We're hoping for fewer than 1 million when we add in migrations. Or is always going to get you more. So if you came up with 5 things and you really needed more, then you would be, okay, what could I add to that to make it bigger? And typically when you or things together, you want to or together things that are synonymous. So we had about 1.7 million. We're going to do sharks and migration patterns. I'm going to do a search. We're not going to add any other fancy stuff to it. We're down to 46,000. Because we were very specific about what we wanted here. How many of you want to go through 46,000? No, I don't want to. What I want to do, though, is I can look at these articles and get a sense of, do any of these look like they might be appropriate for me? Are there any keys I can take from here? And one of the keys that I look at is if I see an article that looks relevant, I look at the subject headings, and are any of my words popping out as a subject heading? Because that would allow me to really focus in, because it means this article is specifically about that concept. It looks like migration is a term on its own. The other thing to me interesting is that movement's an option, and I'm wondering if that's the movement of the animal or movement in terms of migration movement. And so we'd have to look at that to figure it out. This migration patterns of sharks using stable isotopes. This looks like it might be really relevant if this was the topic we were looking at. So I have looked at a couple of these. I see that migration is a subject. I see shark as a subject. So I'm going to go back up to my top. And you'll notice when we initially did our search, we didn't select a field. So the word shark can appear literally anywhere in the article. It could be in the last sentence of the last paragraph of the article. If that's the case, is it relevant to you think? Probably not. It just happens to be there, but it's probably not relevant. But if I say I want shark to be a subject term, and I'm not sure if it's shark or sharks, so I'm going to just use shark, and I want it to be the subject term, that's going to make that be the focus of the article. If I search for this, we're down to not even 1,500 records. And they're all specifically focused on sharks with migration patterns. We could probably get more precise. When I looked at these, I noticed when we looked at some of the others that migration is a subject as well. And we could choose migration as a subject here as well. So I could do migration. But you'll also notice as I type, this is kind of an interesting choice of words. So when I type in migration, the system, I typed in migration patterns, y'all gave me a good word, I just used it. But if I wasn't 100% sure, sometimes if you type in your word, it will give you other options. Are any of these options appropriate for what we're looking for? So I've got migration, migration or immigration, migration or immigration or emigration or refugee, migration to the United States. Are any of these appropriate for what we're looking at? They really aren't. Sometimes the system is not as smart as it thinks it is. But I know that migration is a subject, and I add that in. We're down to 468 things. So we really were able to quickly focus our search down. And this is one of the reasons it's worth your time to schedule an appointment with a librarian. Because if you had started out with 46,000 entries just by doing the shark migration patterns, how many of you would have picked like the first 5? It's what everybody does. Don't be embarrassed. It's what students do. You pick the first 5 and they're not necessarily the best things out there. So by knowing how to really finesse the search, you can pick the 5 best or 5 better than what you started with. Some other things that you can do that may help you is if you waited and your paper was due tomorrow, I would encourage you to use the full text limiter. That means that everything that comes up will be full text. If you did not wait until the last minute and you want the best, I would turn off the full text. And I think this one's actually defaulted to full text. It'll definitely impact what you're looking for. If you're doing a paper, an upper level paper, frequently your faculty member is going to say you need to use scholarly or peer-reviewed materials. How many of you have heard that? So there's a button there that says we can just choose peer-reviewed. And what peer-reviewed means is that the paper that you've written, the person who wrote the paper has had it reviewed by a group of their peers. And that tends to be an iterative process. So your professor writes a paper, submits it for publication in a journal. If it's peer-reviewed, it goes out, it gets read, gets commented on, sent back for correction. So just like you submit a paper for class and it gets sent back for correction, we get our papers back for correction as well. And so the peer review process is iterative. When the paper is great, then they publish it. And so the peer review process just means it tends to be a higher quality paper when you're done. So peer reviewed is another way to go where you could limit the number of results you got. We're down to 350. Other things you might want to look at are publication date. So these are some of the really common things that you can use to limit your search. Depending on your field, depending on your professor, depending on what you're doing, a lot of times you may only want to look at the last 5 or 10 years. I had this funny moment the other day when I was up in the collection and I realized that the books that are older than 2000 are older than most of our incoming students. That was just this weird light bulb moment for me. That there are a lot of books here that are way older than a lot of you. So the date range, limiting by date range, if that's something you want to look at. You could also, so perhaps You are looking specifically for migration in a specific area. We've got some geographical, you've got language limitations and those kind of things as well. So using the limiters on the side here will help. So we've got a set of results, and I'm just going to show you how we can use a couple of them. So the first article, if it looked like it was something that was going to work for you, we've got this article, and I think this is perfect. I want to cite it in my paper. I want to retain this citation so I don't lose it. Anybody remember what the tool was that I like to organize my stuff for my paper? Refworks. So this is how the magic of Refwork happens. I like this. I want to use it for my paper, and I want to retain it. I've got all these tools over here, and you can choose to use whatever works for you. So it may work for you to save this into your Google Drive. You can create a folder and save it there. You can email things to yourself. Maybe you're a printer, you like to print things out. You can create a citation right from within here. So if I click on this citation, it pulls up, again, a computer-generated citation, so you always want to double check, but it does give me some citations. If I wanted to send it to my Refworks account, I actually want to export it. And so if I choose export here, I have a whole list of places I can export it to. I'm going to save it to my Refworks account. You're always going to save to the blue, so think UNF blue, because you want to use the new system. And it has saved one document into my library. And I now have this Some Like It Hot Repeat Migration article is in my folder here. So it saved it. And I can go back. I can just leave that sitting there and I can go back. Couple other things to note. How many of you, if you wanted to send this, you wanted to share this with a faculty member and say, will this article work? What would you send to your faculty member to ask them if this article would work? Just off the top of your head, don't think too hard. Okay, you might send the Refworks citation. That's a good idea. You might send the abstract. How are you going to send it? What information are you going to send? Is anybody going to take that URL at the top and just send them the URL at the top so that they can come and look at it? It's a good answer. You are so afraid that it's a good answer, and it's what most people will do, including one of my favorite chemistry professors who knows more about libraries than I do. He does this to me all the time. He copies this URL and he sends it to me, and when I get it, that URL doesn't work. That URL only works within the setting that we're in right now. If you want to send the URL to your faculty member or to somebody else, there's a permalink down here. Send this. This is the URL that you want to send. This is the URL that will get attached to your Refworks. So if you sent your Refworks citation, that URL would actually be what you had. So that actually would have worked well. You can also email the citation from using the email tools, and that would work as well. You'll send that link from the top a couple times, and then you'll be frustrated, and then you'll start to remember, oh, I need to use the permalink. We all do it. I do it. But I do like to the permalink is the link that it's a stable link that you can repeat and find again. So as you go through, a couple things to look at. So we're looking at only full text. You're seeing full text of your papers here. I'm going to turn off the full text so that we can see what happens if we don't get full text. And I know I have about 2 more minutes with you guys. I'm probably not going to be able to find something that doesn't have full text. This never happens. Of course it's happening. There we go. So this has a link that says Full Text Finder. If it says Full Text Finder and we don't have it, what are you going to do? Give up? It's a perfect article and you want it. You're not going to buy it. You're going to use Interlibrary Loan. You knew there was an option. You're not going to buy it. You're going to use Interlibrary Loan. So if you find that perfect article, Full Text Finder, that's a great time to text the librarian or call the librarian. One other thing I do want to point out is that we now have, this is a new feature, the chat online that I showed you from the library's webpage now also shows up when you're searching the databases. So if you were here and you had that problem, you could actually chat with the librarian from within the system. So you'd be in the system while you were asking your questions, which may be helpful. So we covered a lot of stuff. Do you guys have other questions? Did I cover everything? Okay, so the last question before you go. When you have a question next semester and you can't remember anything we talked about, what are you going to do to get an answer? You're going to ask a librarian. Okay, you guys have a great day. You can. Let me stop our